Welcome. In this screencast, I will be explaining the distinction between real and nominal dollars, which arises when we are entering certain kinds of data. We sometimes refer to real dollars as today's dollars or current year dollars. My hope here is that by the end of this screencast, you will have a solid understanding of this distinction and how to think about your inputs and read reports in light of this real versus nominal distinction. The difference between today's dollars and future nominal dollars is related to inflation, which we see is set here at 1.25%. Everyone basically understands that a dollar in hand this year will not purchase as much next year or 10 years from now as it will today. The value of our dollars, in other words, is eroded away by inflation year over year. So if we want to retain our purchasing power, our standard of living, our discretionary spending, our annual spending allowance, however we want to put it, we have to keep pace with inflation. In other words, the nominal amount, the name value or face value we have to spend must get larger each year in order to represent the purchasing power or real value of today's dollar. I think it's easier if we look at an example. So let's look at special receipts. Let's imagine we are being paid $1,000 per year for some sort of service we might provide. Inflation in this model is set at 1.25%. If I click the preview button, I can see a table that presents today's dollars and nominal dollars side by side. This table shows that in order to keep up with inflation, we need to be handed a check or this number of $1 bills that we see in the right under nominal. A nominal dollar amount that gets larger every year in order to retain the purchasing power that today we call $1,000. In other words, in 2030, for example, we need 1,132 $1 bills in order to purchase what $1,000 will purchase today. It's accurate to say that if inflation is 1.25%, then 1,132 in 2030 is the equivalent of 1,000 in today's dollars, or $20. All of the reports in MaxiFi are in current year dollars, or real dollars. So when you see the dollar amount holding steady, as you do in the left-hand column, you can note that this means that you are not losing purchasing power because you know that you are always looking at today's dollars. You could say in this case that your series of receipts each year is getting a COLA adjustment. A cost of living adjustment means that the income is being adjusted to keep pace with inflation. We could set it up the other way by selecting nominal dollars in our setup, so let's do that. If we show this series of special receipts in MaxiFi report, we'd see the left-hand column. Remember, MaxiFi always displays today's dollars. In this illustration, someone could hand you 1,000 $1 bills each year or write you a check with a face value of 1,000 each year. But notice that because of inflation, that according to today's dollars, real dollars, you would be losing purchasing power each year, and thus it's fair to say that you are getting paid less in real terms. Your $1,000 of earnings in this case are not keeping up with inflation. If this were labor earnings, you might say that you are not getting a COLA adjustment each year, though you are being paid a constant nominal amount year after year. So it's important to ask yourself when you are setting up a special receipt or series of receipts, is this money getting cost of living adjusted for inflation or not? If your aunt promises you $50,000 inheritance 10 years from now, does that mean in today's dollars or nominal dollars? Let's look at the difference. If inflation is 1.25%, in order to receive $50,000 in today's dollars, the check she writes would have to be written for $56,614. On the other hand, if she says, no, I'm simply going to write a check in 10 years for $50,000, then you would enter it in nominal dollars, like this. But notice that when it appears in your report, it will always show up as today's dollars. In this case, 44,159. That is, 50K in 2030 will purchase what we call 44,159 in 2020 dollars. Let's look now at special expenses. Think about how loan payments work. Let's say you had a $300 a month or $3,600 per year car payment for 5 years. Would you enter it in today's dollars or nominal dollars? Typically, a loan is paid back in nominal dollars like this. In other words, the check you write each month is always $300. The bank doesn't notify you each year that there has to be a COLA adjustment to your car payment or your house payment. You pay the same $3,600 per year face value or nominal value. The effect in real terms or today's dollars is that your payment is practically getting cheaper each year because you are, as they say, paying off with cheaper dollars. When you look at your mortgage or series of payments, you will see that the number gets smaller each year because, as I keep saying, your MaxiFi reports are always in today's dollars. Sometimes a user will ask why we don't show our reports in nominal dollars. Say you had a living standard, an even living standard, discretionary spending of $75,000 per year. So let me set that up. This is how MaxiFi would show it as today's even dollars so that the purchasing power was unchanged year over year. However, if we showed this amount as the nominal dollar equivalent, the right-hand column, we'd show the numbers in the right-hand column. As long as we clearly designated them as nominal dollars, it would be correct, but terribly unuseful. You'd see 84,920 in the year 2030, for example, but you'd have to ask, what is the purchasing power? You'd never be able to do the math in your head to know that this series of numbers represented even or steady purchasing power year over year. We may as well show the results in pesos because every number would have to be converted back to today's dollars to give it any intuitive meaning related to its purchasing power. Our brains are calibrated to understand the value or purchasing power of current year dollars, not future nominal dollars. So we've looked at an inheritance or car loans, for example. These are typical examples of special expenses that we enter as nominal dollars. So let's look again at that 50K inheritance 10 years from now. Be careful. Your aunt might say, yes, 50,000 inheritance, but I have it invested in a way that should increase at least with inflation, and I will give you whatever the balance happens to be 10 years from now. If she puts it that way, then I'd enter it as I did here in today's dollars. Let's look now at labor earnings. This can go either way. Notice that if we enter it as 20K in today's dollars, the nominal amount will get larger each year going forward. But in today's dollars, it's simply keeping up with inflation. If your boss never gives you a raise, then you'd simply enter it as nominal dollars, like so. Here we see that your paycheck remains the same nominal or face value each year, and because of inflation, your real income as today's dollars is losing purchasing power or getting behind each year. If you get a raise that outpaces inflation, we often ask for the real raise each year. A 0% real raise means that you merely keep pace with inflation. A 1% real raise means that the nominal raise in this case would be 2.25%, 1% real, and the pattern looks like this. Housing appreciation is another place we ask for the real increase. So let's take a look there. Notice here that the 0% real means that the house appreciation each year rises to keep pace with inflation, say 1.25% each year. But if we enter 2% real, here we are effectively claiming that the home value will appreciate 3.25%, which is 2% over and above inflation each year. The property tax and insurance are pegged to this appreciation rate, and we will see them go up each year in real terms too. Let's look now at pensions. Here we don't have a preview button, But notice at the bottom of the form, we have a place to indicate whether the pension is indexed to inflation or not. If the pension is, say, $10,000 a year and never gets a COLA adjustment, we'd expect to see the dollar amount getting smaller each year in our report, reflecting the fact that inflation is eating away at our pension year over year. Let's take a quick look at that. Here we see the pension is getting smaller year over year because we are losing purchasing power to inflation. On the other hand, if the pension is the kind, perhaps more rare, that COLA adjusts fully each year, it might be, say, 100% indexed to inflation. And in that case, we would see our pension presented this way in the report, as steady, even amounts in today's dollars all the way down the column. So the takeaway here is to pay careful attention to the request in MaxiFi for real appreciation rate. When you see real increase, think relative to inflation. When you see in the reports a table that is the same amount all the way down the column, you know that you are seeing a dollar amount that is holding its own or keeping pace with inflation. You are seeing COLA adjusted dollar amounts. We see those here, for example, in discretionary spending. We see that now also in the pension. We see it in Social Security holding steady against inflation, getting the COLA adjustment every year, like Social Security does. When the amount goes down each year, for example, a pension that is not indexed all or in part to inflation, or a mortgage payment, for example, you will see the amount decline year over year. So that's real versus nominal dollars. I hope this screencast has been helpful.